This is Plant-Based Briefing, Solving Climate Change is Conceptually Simple by Sailesh Rao at climatehealers.org. And I'm Marian Erickson, and this is the curated content plant-based podcast where I curate, get permission, and narrate a variety of articles on plant-based and vegan living in about 10 minutes or less every weekday. And I can't believe this is episode 600 already. Wow, I started this back in April of 2021. Today's episode is by Dr. Sailesh Rao. He is the founder and executive director of Climate Healers. He is a systems specialist with a PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford. He worked on the internet communications infrastructure for 20 years after graduating, and today over 1 billion internet connections deploy the communications protocol that he designed. He has received so many awards for his work. He's the author of 22 peer-reviewed technical papers, 50 standards contributions, 10 U.S. patents, and 3 Canadian patents. He was co-founder of Silicon Design Experts in 1991, which was acquired by Level 1 Communications and later acquired by Intel. But in 2006, he switched careers and became deeply immersed full-time in solving the environmental crisis affecting humanity. And he's an executive producer of many of the vegan documentaries, including The Human Experiment, Cowspiracy, The Sustainability Secret, What the Health, A Prayer for Compassion, They're Trying to Kill Us, The End of Medicine, The Land of Ahimsa, Animals, A Parallel History, and Milked. And his work is featured in the award-winning film Countdown to Year Zero, produced by Unchained TV. He is brilliant and one of the nicest people. He is one of the first people I reached out to when I was planning to launch the podcast to ask permission to read his content. And his response was, "Certainly, Marian, you are welcome to use any of the blog posts or content on the Climate Healers website. It is intended for wide dissemination, Sailesh." And then he invited me to be on his podcast. He had a podcast a couple years ago, and I was a guest on that. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. I was new to all this and even relatively new to veganism, so I was babbling a fair bit, but I enjoyed it. He was so welcoming and so kind, and I went in very nervous, wondering what could anybody possibly want to hear from me? But his point in having me on was to just show that there's so many different things people can do to contribute to the cause by just sharing what they know how to do. Like I happened to have a voiceover set up and knew how to do the recording. I loved to do the research and thought I would just put it out there. And just a couple more things before I get to the article. In 2010, Dr. Rao became a grandfather, and a few years later, he made a promise to his granddaughter, Kimaya, a pinky promise, that he'll do everything in his power to ensure that the world is largely vegan before she turns 16 in 2026. He has faith that humanity will transform to keep his pinky promise to Kimaya, not just for ethical reasons, but out of sheer ecological necessity. He was designated a climate hero by the Guardian newspaper in 2023. He serves on the Universal Meals Advisory Council of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine and on the board of directors for the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies. So he's an all-round impressive guy. And lastly, Climate Healers hosts quarterly online conferences called VCOP, Vegan Convergence of the Peoples. The next one is VCOP 14, and it will have aired by the time this episode drops, but you can catch the replays on their YouTube channel, their Facebook page, or climatehealers.org. So now let's get to today's plant-based briefing. Solving Climate Change is Conceptually Simple by Dr. Sailesh Rao at climatehealers.org. Quote, "Man's reason and spirit have often solved the seemingly unsolvable," unquote. John F. Kennedy. Solving climate change is conceptually simple. We can cool our planet and restore a stable climate by replenishing the forests and native ecosystems that were destroyed for animal agriculture. As I explain in this short video linked here, the underlying facts show this to be true, while that truth is being obscured by the UN IPCC greenhouse gas accounting conventions. Solving climate change begins with changing our intention from plundering the planet to healing the planet. If our intention is to continue plundering the planet, then the rhetoric on climate change will also get increasingly heated up, even as global temperatures spike up. For instance, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres just announced, quote, "Climate change is here. It is terrifying, and it's just the beginning. The era of global warming has ended. The era of global boiling has arrived. The air is unbreathable. The heat is unbearable. and the level of fossil fuel profits and climate inaction is unacceptable, unquote. Notice two things he did. Firstly, he declared the end of the global warming era and the arrival of the global boiling era, seemingly indicating that the warming of our planet has reached some irreversible runaway condition. Has it really? It's true that we have most likely endured the hottest summer ever in the Northern Hemisphere in recorded history, with wildfires in Canada and Europe reaching apocalyptic proportions. Melting Himalayan glaciers are threatening to flood 7 million people in Pakistan, causing widespread migration pressures. Vast quantities of methane are bubbling up in the Atlantic Ocean, in addition to the methane bubbling up in the Siberian permafrost. I keep receiving emails asking if these events indicate that we have passed the point of no return on a stable climate. A new scientific article linked here pegged the end of the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, AMOC, between 2025 and 2095. If AMOC shuts down, Europe will paradoxically get much colder, even as the Earth warms. Notice how the lower end of this range estimate is just 2 years from now, while the upper end is 72 years from now? There is such a vast gulf in this range estimate because non-linear feedback systems are notoriously difficult to model. Therefore, my response to these emails has always been and always will be, I don't know. All I know is that we need to change our intention and change our game of money correspondingly in order to keep living. In my professional opinion, it is not worthwhile to analyze how fast the non-linear feedback loops in the climate system can run away and cause our near-term extinction if we continue on our plundering spree, burning down 30 million acres of tropical forests each year for more dairy and meat production, bottom trawling the ocean even in so-called marine protected areas while killing trillions of animals each year for our so-called protein needs. It is much more worthwhile to work on reversing the key indicators of the planetary boundaries that are within our control: effective radiative forcing for climate change, nitrogen and phosphorus loading, chemical pollution, land use change, freshwater use, tropical deforestation, and biodiversity loss. This requires us to shut down the killing machine, animal agriculture, as soon as possible, and dial down the burning machine, the fossil fuels industry, over time, as the climate bathtub model linked here indicates. If the Arctic and permafrost methane release, glacier melts, wildfires, floods, extreme temperatures, etc., respond in the right direction when we shut down the killing machine and dial down the burning machine, then we can breathe a sigh of relief that we haven't yet triggered these non-linear feedback loops beyond the point of no return. Otherwise, we have to model each problem situation in a healing modality, not a plundering modality, and deal with it as best we can. Secondly, the UN Secretary General singled out the fossil fuel industry as the sector to blame for the heated climate. While this framing has been used to perpetuate our planetary plundering spree for the past 3 decades, it is not particularly helpful and likely even suicidal in the current circumstances. Due to the co-emitted sulfur dioxide when we burn fossil fuels, which cools the atmosphere, an abrupt shutdown of the burning machine will overheat the planet, possibly triggering Mr. Guterres's global boiling phase in earnest. At Climate Healers, we have used the tagline, "Transform yourself, transform our world," placing personal transformation at the core of our solution to climate change. We have noted that the same is true at a species level. Homo sapiens must transform into Homo ahimsa in order to solve climate change. From our understanding, the science is clear that mere changes in how we harness energy, while continuing with civilization as we know it, is an inadequate response to the environmental predicaments we face. Are recent events dire enough for the majority of people to recognize that this global industrial civilization is being painted into a corner by Mother Nature? If so, are we collectively desperate enough to contemplate lifestyle changes? While solving climate change is conceptually simple, we could use a lot of help with the knotty details, especially since the UN IPCC has proven to be a captured body. Therefore, I'm calling on my fellow engineers to form a nonprofit called Engineers for the Survival of Humanity to be an independent body helping with the cross-disciplinary modeling and recommending solutions for society to adopt. I'll be speaking on this issue during our upcoming convergence, VCOP 14, August 5th and 6th, and I welcome your engagement and input. Thank you for your support. Help us every day to heal the planet, eat plants, love animals, plant trees. It's that simple. Thanks again for being a superhero and joining our herd. Please forward this to all your friends, and let's grow our movement together. You just listened to Solving Climate Change is Conceptually Simple by Dr. Sailesh Rao at climatehealers.org, and I'm your host, Marian Erickson. As always, I put a link to the original post in the show notes. I'll also separate out the link to the video he mentioned. It talks about the bigger issue with climate change being deforestation, not fossil fuels, and gives people simple things they can do to be part of the solution, even an app. So I'll link that, and it's a great one to share. And please share this episode with anyone who might benefit, and thanks for listening.